Yeah, wonderful. Good morning from Vienna, and welcome to our episode of the Tech Recruiting Academy. And it's a special format, and I think there's some kind of background information coming soon. We were talking about the situation on the market and that market situation that we are hosting one of the biggest developer communities in Europe as we're developers. We're always in contact. We know what the people like, what they dislike. And I think it was a good idea. And then I met this guy in the upper left corner on my screen, Hang Lee. And we were talking about it. And then the idea came up to probably try to connect both worlds. And these both worlds in a way that all the misunderstandings, all these kind of assumptions, all these kind of stereotypes that are here in the market, to get rid of them. And this is the basic idea of this format series. And I really want to welcome Hang Lee, and he will then probably introduce our other two guests in a minute. So Hang, welcome. It's really great to have you on board for this format with the first session that we called How to Recruit a Java Developer. Probably you can tell something more.
Thank you very much, Rudy, and welcome everybody. Yes, we are here to try and bring two communities together, folks. We have on the one hand software engineers, technical people who are building the digital world. Then we have people who recruit those folks, the tech recruiters on that side. And the question kind of emerged to think, okay, why are these two groups of people typically in a not great relationship, I would say? Why is there sometimes rancor between the two groups? Why is there misunderstanding? Is it possible that we can find out a little bit more from each other, bring them into conversation, and find a way in which we can create better understanding, hopefully better relationships? So today, we're not here to hammer one group or another group. We're simply here to try and better understand how sort of we behave. What are the motivations? What are the drivers? Why is it that developers sometimes behave like this? Maybe we can explain that to the recruiters out there. And then why do recruiters behave like this? Maybe we can explain that to the engineers. And to that end, we've got a 4-5-part series. Every time we're going to look at a slightly different technical discipline, and we're going to get a recruiter on screen along with a developer or a developer advocate on screen as well. And we're just going to engage in the conversation and bring it over to you as well. Now, for folks who are watching on LinkedIn, it would be very interesting for us to know. Let us know in the comments, are you actually a tech recruiter or are you a software engineer? It'd be good to know what the breakdown of the conversation is. We're trying to address both audiences here. So let us know in the comments. Say developer if you're a technical person. Say recruiter if you're a recruiter. Okay, let's introduce our wonderful guests. Jonathan, let's go with you first. Can you quickly describe who are you and what it is you do?
Well, I'm basically developer advocate for Sonar, but I've been developer for more than 30 years and lately with Java. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and share what I think from the developer perspective.
Cool. Fantastic stuff. And Thomas, good to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, thanks, Sang. So I'm Thomas Pearson. I've worked in technical recruitment for the last 12 years at RecWorks, a community-driven technical recruitment agency. Worked in various different ways, from contingency to retain to recruitment as a service, predominantly within sort of Java and JVM technologies. So somewhat nervous being the only recruiter, I guess, in the room, but keen to see where it takes us.
Not at all. Have you seen the comment thread, Thomas? We are overwhelmingly.
You're not alone. You're not alone, Thomas. You're not alone.
No, but also this is very interesting because the title of the show is How to Hire a Java Engineer. So it naturally would attract people who are interested in doing this activity. And that's ultimately the aim. Like, how can we increase the communication between the two groups and basically treat people in a way in which they want to be treated? There's a background noise here. I think we picked that up earlier. I wonder whether we could have a look at that. Maybe it's a case of turning down the mic or perhaps changing the mic, perhaps. Seems to be something we're hearing. Okay, let us know if that's a problem. Thank you, Zanetta. Right, Jonathan, let's go to you on this and talk about sort of the most common complaints or criticisms from the developer community, from the Java developer community, that you kind of have a sense of when they are talking about recruiters? Can you list for us like some of the stuff that you think, okay, this is quite a common thing that developers have a problem with?
Well, basically, one of the main issues is the quantity. So we receive lots of direct emails or even contacts in LinkedIn. Also, another important point that I've heard from other colleagues and also for me is that messages are like coming from campaigns. So I've been asked for or offered a position using PHP. It's been like almost 25 years that I haven't used PHP, but I'm being offered the PHP. Even you see that the messages are not taking into account where do you work, or I don't know, you are working for a super big company and they offer you a job for a 3 months position. So it's like, which are the chances that you are going to select that? So it's curious about not paying attention to the individual, but using campaigns as bulk. Just to only add an example of this, it happened to me yesterday. I received a message in LinkedIn, a direct message, because I tend to approve any connect request. It's fine. But then they send you a message, and that person offered me a position, and I said, no, I'm not interested right now, but let's be in contact for the future. And the answer was, oh, unfortunately, we don't support this kind of requests. Let's be in touch for the future. Okay. So I assume that person has like an automatic response for any response that it is not a yes. So I don't know. But yes, that means, or at least it gives the idea of you are not putting attention of what you are doing. You are sending messages to everywhere without caring who are you sending. Then, therefore, people are not open to those messages when you have received tons of them. That it was, curious, at least.
Yeah, so very, very clear. So essentially high volume of messages, but also like automation into the message. It basically doesn't feel as if they care. It's just here, and tomorrow you will receive another one, of course, Jonathan, exactly the same. So we know this is the situation. Thomas, go to you. What is happening here? How does this experience occur? Can you explain to us, like, how does this happen from a recruiter perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I can only really sort of speak from my perspective. It's not something that we would tend to do, but these platforms like LinkedIn, they make it very easy to put together these kind of, I guess, automated outbound kind of reach out messages with regards to work. And it unfortunately, by the sounds of it, it does work somewhat when attracting candidates still. Otherwise, recruiters wouldn't do it. I think it's potentially, a bit of a lazy way to reach out to a network to gain responses from engineers who are perhaps actively looking for work, without necessarily sort of trawling through their own network. So yeah, it's not necessarily a practice that I feel will win you many friends or potentially many new clients or anything like that. So my gut feeling is it still happens today because there's a percentage of people who are open to work that will respond to these messages. So yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on it.
That's actually a really interesting point, because if it was completely useless, the behavior would stop, and the products we wouldn't build software of this type. But because small numbers of people might actually respond positively, then the person sending the message will say, hey, this worked, because it's too easy to press one button, send 1,000 messages. And then you know what? You get one response and it's like you forget about the 999. that were either no's, blocks, even negative responses back. Yeah, whatever, because I've got the one candidate I care about. So what this is about is essentially there's no penalty to this behavior. There's only a small potential gain. So again, this is not justification for behavior, but it's trying to explain how this happens and why it happens. And essentially, the cost is not borne by the person committing the crime, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's almost like I'm going down the street. I'm going to try and like rob some fruit from various marketplaces. And there's no penalty if I get caught, no problem. But I walk down the street, I'm probably going to come back with a couple of apples, and that seems like a success to me. So that's basically what is going on when it's outbound. I think it's very similar to sales, isn't it, Rudy? Like when you're doing like cold calling or you're trying to hustle a business, you crank out 100 calls, you annoy 99, doesn't matter, you get one, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, that is also the reason why we as WeAreDevelopers, for example, don't give this direct access to the database, because of that reason. I think that we give companies the possibility to really make themselves attractive, to present them in different ways, but not the direct access, because we want to avoid exactly that habit, that people are spammed, because I think you ruin more than you win. Yeah, and you explained it quite, because I think even if you got one candidate, you probably bothered 999 others.
Here's the thing as well. It's like, not only are you upsetting 99 of the others, but you're also the cost is borne by the reputation of the entire industry, right? So I'm cranking out, I'm getting my one person. That's great. I can move forward with that one person, but those 99 people now have a -1 when they're thinking about recruiters in general. So what can we do about this, Thomas? Like you say, this seems to work, but is it beyond fixing? I mean, this thing it's been around for a long time. Like, what are the? Is it beyond sort of our solution, or what are your thoughts on what we could do as recruiters to improve this here?
Yeah, I think while it is as easy as it is to put together shortlists as large as they are right now, to do this kind of mass reach out, it's difficult to move away from that if the business that you're representing, or perhaps the hirer that you're representing, is happy with that kind of approach. I feel like it will change, or it does change for more kind of niche hires, or it should do. When you start to see vacancies with more difficult sort of technical requirements or seniority levels, I very much doubt that this kind of sort of mail shot approach works, and that is very much where you'll start to see relationships, past relationships sort of come into play here, with people that you've worked with before, like a true network or community of people that may sort of start to match up with job descriptions, and more an individual sort of personalized approach working. How we move away from it, like I say, it's so widely available. There's so many sort of platforms that are able to do this. It's too easy, yeah. And like you say, there's no, if the recruiter's sort of okay with potentially annoying a few people along the way, then it's not something that's sort of closely kind of managed. So yeah, unfortunately, I sort of see it still happening. One thing I've noticed actually, Hung, is on your sort of LinkedIn profile, if you start to put like an emoji or something like that in your name, it becomes very easy to tell between which are the kind of automated messages and which are the personalized ones, because often if you're scripting something on LinkedIn, it will automatically pull the candidate's name. So if you've got, I don't know, a guitar, for instance, in your name, it will say, "Hi, Guitar Jonathan." Whereas if you're receiving sort of a personalized message, it should hopefully not reference the guitar.
So here's a bit of a tip for developers then. It's possible for you to kind of adulterate your name on LinkedIn such that you will be able to immediately identify if it's an automated response, because they'll pull in some symbol with the mail merge. That's obvious, right? So So again, the reason why we're having this conversation is, can we give tips to the other side? And here's a great tip. It would actually, in that case, Jonathan, it would have saved you at least one interaction, right? So it might be useful. Yeah?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But it's again, it's I assume that recruiters need bulk emails or campaigns, but it's like you should tweak them or tailor them specifically. So probably sending a message for a lot of people probably can give you 1, 2, 3 candidates. But definitely, as you said, Thomas, if you are searching for high level of seniority, probably that's not the way. But if you are searching for juniors, probably that's a good way. So definitely, it's something that needs to be put into the into the concept that you are going to do. Just considering which is the audience that you. It's not like shooting to everyone alive out there. That's a good point.
I wonder whether LinkedIn, I mean, we're talking specifically about LinkedIn, but we know platforms have made some effort to sometimes moderate the negative behaviors. And going on Jonathan's idea that potentially the mass mail may be okay for a junior level person, entry level person. The higher you go up in seniority, obviously less effective. Probably LinkedIn could do something about that, where they could say, you know what, this person has been on platform for more than 2 years. We assume this is an experienced person. You can't be sending that message, or there's a throttling of how much you could send. I don't think that feature exists. So right now, it's still dependent on the individual recruiter to make that assessment. And one of the issues is there's a lot of variability as to who's actually doing the job of recruiting. I mean, there's a big difference between a recruiter who themselves might be an entry-level person, and even 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line in terms of experience, straight away there's a huge difference. So that is an interesting way to think about it. By the way, I'm just reminded of things like, remember when Stack Overflow used to do like a rating type of service where a message comes in and you'd have to respond positively, or there's some sort of way in which the receiver could indicate that this was an okay message, and it would restore the number of messages that you could actually send. So it was a credit system. I think LinkedIn could do it, but they're motivated. The platform takes some responsibility because they're motivated, obviously, to sell recruiter licenses, and they're going to say, you know what, hey guys, you got like 10,000 messages this week. What are you going to do? Recruiter's going to crank that lever, right? So it's a tough one. It really is. Okay. Let's switch it up. Let's go to you, Thomas. We've had Jonathan sort of say what are the top things that annoy engineers about recruiters. Let's switch it up. What are the top things that annoy recruiters about engineers? I mean, is there things that you discuss in group in the companies? Oh my God, again, this type of thing. Or what sort of things do you think, behaviors that you think, okay, this is annoying for you as a recruiter?
Yeah, I mean, after doing this for 12 years, you kind of desensitize yourself a little bit to some of these things, and you've seen it sort of, or you come across it so often that you try not to sort of let it annoy you so much. So I wouldn't say annoy, but yeah, I guess one of the things that does come up quite a lot, and it's quite common in when recruiting sort of software engineers is this, I guess, reluctance to kind of jump on a call and run through your experience and talk about an opportunity and do the sort of the screening dance essentially for 10 or 15 minutes. I understand, it can be annoying if you're having to do that multiple times a day when searching for work, but yeah, certainly from the recruiter side, it's incredibly important actually when representing a business to be able to confidently recommend someone for an interview, right? Like obviously we've probably read through your CV or your LinkedIn profile and we've got a reason to reach out to you, but there's far more to say than what is typically on a CV. And if we can sort of get to know someone in terms of like their communication style and how they hold themselves in conversation, perhaps anything that isn't actually listed on a CV, we can then start to build a bit of a profile and recommendation as to why a hiring manager should should speak to you. We can make them a fan of you, essentially, and it's very difficult to do that without necessarily speaking to someone on the phone.
Okay, really, really interesting. We actually had this conversation just before we went live. So let's dive into it. You're saying, Thomas, it's annoying that engineers are kind of being difficult about getting onto a phone call. And the reason why you want this to happen is that you believe that the conversation on the call will give you enough more information to equip you to be able to sell the candidate into the customer or the hiring manager or wherever that is. So presumably, if you're an engineer looking for work, you need to be a bit more receptive to this. However, let's examine why it is that engineers might have a problem with coming onto a call. This may be mysterious for a lot of recruiters here. In fact, a lot of recruiters listening in or watching this show, do you actually have this issue as well? Like, are you keen to get on a call with a candidate? And do you find it annoying that doesn't happen? And also, do you know why the candidates don't want to do this? Jonathan, I'm going to put it back to you. What's your reason why you would not want to go into a call with a recruiter? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, why is that a problem?
Well, basically, if it's like the first step, I don't see the point, and I'm selling my phone number for nothing. Or if it's a video call, it's different. I would accept more a video call. I don't remember in the last years to receive any phone call from anyone. But the problem is that if you try to go to the call immediately, probably a developer can feel like intimidated. So it's like, okay, I want to go deeper if you at least reveal one of your cards. So it's like, okay, which is the project that I'm going to work on? And briefly, which is the salary range? Because if not, it's like you are going to arrange a meeting, you are blocking. In some cases, people do not have like that freedom. So I remember years ago when I had to do interviews, but I needed to do crazy things because in my company I couldn't attend a call, a video call or phone call. So I needed to do crazy things. But so it's important to give something before asking for a call. So okay, I know that you are asking for this specific project, and you are giving a salary range that it is more or less what I can accept. Then let's talk more about it. Because as I said, if I received a phone call, video call request for a recruiter selling me a project in PHP that I haven't used in 25 years, definitely there's no point. So if that person doesn't say anything about the language that I'm going to use, and we jump on a call and that person starts saying, okay, this is project PHP, wow. No, why you are offering me something in PHP, and which is the salary? Oh no, that level. Oh no, I'm not interested on that. So it was a total waste of time, and I gave my phone number, my time, for nothing. That's I think that this is the first reason, I would say.
You've actually given 3 reasons there, Jonathan, and I think all of them I think all of them are really relevant. So let's talk about number 1, privacy issue. I think software engineers are hypersensitive to privacy. Of course they are, because they're building privacy first. When you're building software, you're always thinking about, oh, where's the data going? Whereas a recruiter, let's be honest, guys, recruiters are generally quite laissez-faire when it comes to what's out there. You know, we don't really care that much. But a phone number actually is a really important bit of information, particularly as firstly, we rarely change the number that we have. Right, we change the email more than we change the number. So if we have that out there, guess what? Into a recruiter database, that could be very, very bad. Let me tell you just a very quick story. This is a bit of a segue. A good developer friend of mine. This is now going back 10 years. And he was made redundant. We weren't a startup. He lost his job. We all lost our jobs. And he said, yeah, I just put my CV online. It's like, oh, great. Let me take a look at it, man. So I took a look at it. He had his number on there. I said, dude, what have you done? You're gonna have to throw your phone number away because you need to, that's newt. That is forever on a recruiter database now. And you're always going to get like a DM, you're always going to get a random call. Literally, you cannot use that number anymore. And so privacy, number one. Very few of us have a technology that can mask a number. I think technologies are out there. Sometimes you can create a dummy one or whatever it is. But if you're asking for a number, it's actually quite intimate. So maybe if you want to do something, video call, hey, no real exchange of personal information. Perhaps that is the best way to do it. Second thing you mentioned, Jonathan, which I thought was super interesting, was the, and we didn't sort of extend it, but it's worth talking about, the feeling that you might be intimidated by coming into the call. Now, have a think about this, recruiters. We use the phone all the time. We talk all the time. For us, this is very normal, very, very, this is the job. However, a software engineer is not a speech-first job. It's a role where you're looking at code, you're producing code, and you're in a different type of brain. Your mindset is different. So if you're asking someone to shift from that mindset into this mindset, can you not understand why that might be difficult? It will be the same as if I said to you, by the way, look at this code base, guys. If I said to recruiters, right, the next thing we want to do is look at the code base. That's going to intimidate you because you're not familiar with this. So the intimidation factor and our comfort level with the medium is super important. And Thomas, I'll bring you in a second on this. I think you're desperate to say something. But the third thing that Jonathan mentioned is super interesting is, look, is there an equal exchange of information here? Like right now, it seems that I have not had enough information provided to me to commit my time to do a call. 5 minutes, again, no problem for a recruiter. We're like switching conversations all the time. Not unusual for a recruiter to have 100 calls a day or 100 conversations a day. For a software engineer, that's actually quite strange for any software engineer to have 10 conversations of that type. So think about switch tasking. Think about deep work. If the engineer is like looking at trying to fix a problem, a 5-minute phone call could be a distraction that would bleed out an hour's worth of productivity because you've switched into some of the mode of thinking. So you need to have some reciprocity, provide some information before the developer is prepared to commit. Okay, thoughts on this? Rudy, let's bring you in before I bring Jonathan. Before I bring in Thomas, what are your thoughts on this idea that, that there's a reason why a recruiter wants to do this, but also there's a reason why an engineer will not?
I was thinking, while we're discussing now, I was thinking about that what I experienced in the last 15 to 20 years. And I think, honestly, there was always the companies in the driver's seat. We had so many active looking candidates that companies were in the driver's seat and they really were playing with this. So I think response times were quite long. I mean, you got a stack of applications, you were going through it and took some time. You took the time it needed or even more than it needed. And now it's the opposite, and I'm always aiming for having conversations on eye level, as I call it, so that both sides are having this kind of feeling that they're on the same kind of level. And I just was thinking about in the last couple of minutes now, is there a reason why the developer side is probably blocking it a little bit now as well? Because I mean, they want to be treated like the genius, and they know that they're in the driver's seat now. So probably that's an aspect as well, that they enjoy being on the other side now and being in the driver's seat and having a stronger position. And that's my feeling, because when we had the World Congress in 2019, the last before Corona, we were discussing if it could make sense to have a kind of a tech recruiting area somewhere. And we decided against it because that's really annoying developers. And at this time, that was definitely true. If you look on it today or last year, I mean, we at the World Congress in 2023, we offered a kind of a job coaching for developers, and we got, out of 14,000 developers being there, we got nearly 2,000 applications for the job coaching. So that shows that there is a kind of conversation is coming back on this kind of fairness level that I totally like, because I think if both parties are willing to talk to each other, that makes sense. And probably layoffs that happened in the US and all over Europe as well probably brought that a little bit more in balance. That I think that's probably something which also makes an impact on what's going on there.
That's such a great observation. So market conditions also will have this wider impact in terms of candidate and recruiter behavior. And there's maybe, again, we don't want to talk about balance of power because it seems like it's a little bit too Machiavellian to think in these terms, but there is this like abundance mindset. So let's say if you're walking around and you're a candidate and you know there's a job anytime you want to make that job, of course you're going to be pretty much, you know what, I'm not particularly interested in the terms that have been presented to me, the terms of engagement that have been presented to me by these recruiters, I'm going to ignore. But if the market dries up and the world changes somewhat and suddenly the jobs change, you might then be more open to take that call. So I think, yeah, absolutely. We can maybe observe the level of engagement. In fact, let's ask the audience here. Folks, have you discerned a difference in terms of candidate responsiveness from, you know, are developers responding more to you today, which we anticipate to be a slightly down market compared to what it was, let's say 18 months or so ago, 2 years or so ago? Have you kind of intuitively found, you know what, I think engineers are talking to me a little bit more? Let us know in the comments. Thomas, you've been really patient as I've kind of listed a lot of these reasons why developers will not go onto a call. What are your sort of thoughts on some of those ideas that we surfaced up?
Yeah, I think, you know, Jonathan made some really fair and sort of interesting points there. I think, you know, recruiters need to be sensitive to the reasons behind perhaps, you know, why a developer might not want to step on a call. And you're completely right. You know, I myself very sort of sensitive of where I put my phone numbers, so I wouldn't expect any different from the people, you know, I'm trying to I guess essentially attract. So by all means, much more of a fan of a video call anyway, and like you say, it keeps that personal information a little bit more secure. And I must be clear as well, you know, I think you know, in my experience, I'm talking here about once there is a level of interest in a vacancy that, you know, I'm recruiting for, is that expectancy to be able to have a verbal conversation at some point with a candidate. I'm not expecting someone to jump onto a call if I'm not proposing something that may be attractive to them in any way. And I think you touched on it earlier in the call, Hung. If you have perhaps I guess an inexperienced recruiter, someone early in their recruitment career contacting you, chances are they may have some KPIs around conversations that week or something like that to try and gain sort of experience within the domain that they're working in. And by all means, yeah, I understand that can feel like a big waste of time sometimes. But yeah, very, very clear here that it's more so once we have established that level of interest in position that we're recruiting for, a job description has been shared. Like you say, Jonathan, an amount of information around salary, stack, project, and this has already been established. I think it's very important for us to be mindful that you know, there's different mediums in the ways that we should communicate with developers rather than just, you know, phone calls or video calls and things like that.
Okay, so I think that's quite reasonable. Let's sit on that a little bit, and bringing you in onto this, Jonathan. If the first contact, the person wants immediate phone call, we understand that's likely to be a no, and we understand the resistance to that. So maybe recruiters, there's a learning opportunity there. Don't rush to try and close on a conversation. The second point is, like, what degree of information exchange does it set it up to the point where there is a requirement for synchronous conversation? I think most developers would be up for that based on what level of information is required. So firstly, salary, a little bit of detail about the project, the work. The company needs to be disclosed, right? Oftentimes recruiters don't want to tell what the company is, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, you got to disclose, you know, the identity of the company. What other bits of information do you think are required before you would be happy to go on a call?
Well, you said a very important point, that it is not disclosing the company. Definitely not disclosing the company makes it, for a developer, hard to progress unless you are in hard needs of a job. That's an important part. But also, I've experienced in the past that in some cases recruiters have like a headcount requirement for that company in a bunch of languages, but then you don't know exactly in which team that person is going to go. So it's like, yeah, I have this opening for this company. Languages are JVM languages or Java, Kotlin, whatever. Okay, but which is the team? Yeah, I don't know. So, and then if you join the company, then you discover the team, and it could be that the team you don't like it, or so you need to go very forward in the process to know where are you going to be and which are your colleagues. This is also an important thing. It's like, okay, who is working there in that team or in a close team? Because as Thomas said before, it's very important at a certain level of seniority. You are counting with personal connections. Yes, that company can sound amazing. Salary is more or less okay. But then, okay, I cannot be happy because of, I don't know, my team colleagues are not what I was expecting. Or I could even sacrifice a bit of salary just because I know that in that team, I will have this person and this other person as teammates. So I think it's important at a certain level of seniority to know exactly where are you going to be. That's why, at least in my experience, it has been more or less on the contrary. It's not receiving the offer, but looking at the positions that are out there, just searching, asking people that I know, and then apply to those that I think are already, I have insights from that company. So it's let's say from the other side, right? So it's not a pull method but a push, because there are a lot of information that is important in order to move forward, and most of the times recruiters are not disclosing this information. I assume that because in most of the cases they don't even know. So that's a good point.
That's a very interesting sort of a point that we want to just discuss real quick. And this is maybe something engineers or any candidate may not be aware of, but just because the recruiter is representing this organization doesn't tell you the quality of the relationship they have with that company. So for instance, I may have retained someone like Thomas to say, Thomas, you're the recruiter for my company. I want you into the business. I want you understanding everything about it so you can accurately represent me to the audience. That's a high quality relationship. I'm not working with any other recruiter. Thomas, you got the shot. You can go and hire this people. That's the ideal case for most recruiters, to have that exclusive relationship of supply to a role. However, most of the time, that is not the relationship we have with the end client. It may just be a very brief to say, here's the job, take a look and find some candidates, and then we'll see whether we want to take it further. It could be your brief by HR that are, again, further distant from the job. You don't even know who you're interacting with. HR or internal TA might be blocking you from interacting with the hiring managers and getting detailed project work. And of course, that's not explicit to the engineering community. Like we as recruiters don't or can't signal the quality of the relationship we have or have not with the end employer. And if we're honest, Thomas, you probably also have a variable level of quality relationships with your customers, right? So you will have, let's say, top tier customers that you do have that relationship with, but then you might have a bunch of customers that you don't. You're in competition with a couple of other companies. And then at the C level, you might have a bunch of companies that actually you're just beginning a relationship with. And in fact, you don't have that much information. So even within a single recruiter, they may have variable relationships with different end employers. Therefore, the candidate is not to be aware like what level of quality you might get into you might get from that candidate. Again, that's just something hopefully we can just expose to explain, you know what, one of the things I think engineers might be able to ask, Thomas, you tell me whether this is something you'd be happy to respond to. If an engineer asked you to inquire a little bit about the quality of the relationship you had with the end employer, would you be happy to disclose that? If so, why? If not, why?
Yeah, of course. I mean, at this stage in my career, absolutely, there's a huge responsibility on recruiters to get that initial kind of alignment and calibration piece right at the beginning of any relationship. I think a lot of the frustrations that we're discussing here are part of or a result of that contingency way of working, that no win, no fee approach to recruitment. And it's typically like this mad rush to market. You know, you have this new requirement come in, and the recruiter is incentivized to sort of get in touch with as many people as possible, perhaps even before necessarily truly understanding what the requirement is. And that's something that personally myself, I've tried to move away from. I'll try and ensure that, you know, the model that we're following or that I'm following with my client allows me to ensure that there's that alignment piece at the beginning of the relationship. And if someone with an engineer was to ask me, you know, how long have you been working with these guys? What do you know about them? What do you know? Who have you placed there? That's something I'm more than happy to share, even if it is a brand new relationship, because it then allows me to communicate some of the potential challenges that we may come up against. If it's a new relationship, it may well be, you know, that feedback is a little bit longer than what we might expect. There is a little bit of an exploratory phase with any new relationship with a client. And yeah, if an engineer was interested in what my relationship looked like with the business, by all means, I'm more than happy to be transparent there.
That sounds like it would maybe solve the problem, or at least help reduce, so maybe provide an explanation, wouldn't it, Jonathan? Like if an engineer sort of was able to interact with the recruiter and say, hey, listen, what's your relationship with this company? And the recruiter was able to be honest and say, you know what, first time we've worked with this company, we're not quite sure of all of the details or parameters. We've been given this brief. They've sent it by email. We want to just speak to the market really quickly to get a vibe test to see whether this is a job that might be interesting. But we haven't yet had the meeting with the hiring manager. We're going to do that in the next couple of days once we have done a little bit of this market research. That feels to me it would help a lot for the candidate. Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Having like everything that it is towards having a personal relationship. So it's like a person to a person, not like someone that it is selling products to someone that needs to buy them. I think it's positive to create that kind of bond. The problem here, I think that we are facing like 2-3 phases of the conversation. So one is, okay, the recruiter needs to recruit someone, which is the best way to approach them. Okay. Then once you have approached them, okay, which is the things that you need to do in order to move forward. And finally, once both agrees on that there is interest, how you progress into assessing that person. Because I didn't say it before, but another problem that some engineers are finding is that, okay, I could be that I'm happy kind of in my company, but I could change, or because I'm not happy in my company and I want to change. But the problem is that going through the tests or the checks, so going through a recruitment process is sometimes painful, super long. Therefore, developers are more reluctant to start any progress if they don't see it super amazingly clear that it's like the nirvana for them. So it's because, well, it has happened to me. So 4-5 tests, 3 months interviews, and then you receive a yes or a no. If you are applying for few positions, or you receive information from few positions, Well, you need to think several times before starting that process that will take you a lot of time, interviews. Yeah, I think the personal connection is important, and from the recruiter knowing that this process for an engineer, that it is not their main job. Their main job is coding, developing. Therefore, this is creating an extra stress uh, for a long time. Uh, in some cases, you need to do, like, except of dancing or swimming, you need to do a lot of things and super complicated tests somewhere here and there. That's another point that if you want, we can discuss about tests. But it's important to understand that the developer is stressed out when they move forward in a process. So they need to have like a very nice bond with the recruiter in order to move forward.
Do you know what? That's a really interesting insight, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing that. I think we can describe this as the assessment load. So in other words, a candidate, if you're like, let's say a salesperson or whatever it is, you as a candidate, you have a very different assessment load compared to a technical person who will be rigorously tested, coding challenges, tech interviews, all these types of things happening to validate whether this person can do the job or not. So therefore, entry into a recruiting process for a technical candidate is quite a big commitment. Even taking the first call. So maybe even that can like, what does it mean to take a call from a recruiter? What am I committing to? Straight away, it may be a very long process, big commitment of time. Do you have the energy? Do you have all of that ready to go? So recruiters have an understanding as to what your assessment load, your requirement is to go through the process. I wonder whether actually a recruiter might be able to disclose that again to the candidate to say, hey, if you do want to go forward, the recruiting process that we're going through with this company or with this hiring manager is like this, just to let you know in advance, this is the procedure. And then maybe that can also be additional information that could help the candidate make the assessment as to whether they want to go forward or not. So yeah, again, it's about transparency and surfacing these things up. Folks, go ahead, Rudy.
That is what I wanted to add. I think it's more these kind of, even if the process is complex, I think if you state it from the beginning, it's even better than having it intransparent and foggy. And I think at the moment, in many organizations, it's a kind of much too complicated. It's much too foggy. And I think as developers normally get not only one offer from one company, so I think they can pick and choose. And they definitely will take the least stressy one.
Yep, absolutely. And by the way, there's some really good companies that are starting to make their recruiting processes very, very transparent. If they've developed the policy around this and they publish it on their website and their career pages, say, look, we recruit in this way. Here are the procedures. If you come into the flow, this is what you can expect. I think that's a winning ticket, a winning way to do it. And it's all about managing the expectations. Folks, we can keep talking because we've got loads to talk about. It's been an amazing conversation, but we've only got like 10 minutes to go. So I wanted to let's narrow focus now, particularly on the programming language, particularly on the Java engineering community. And this is at risk of moving into some stereotyping. I totally get it. But in order to have this debate, we have to be brave enough to make generalizations. Here is where we're going to try and distinguish Java recruiting away from other types of recruiting for technical people. What sort of distinctions would you say as particularly important for the Java engineers particularly? Jonathan, let's go to you. Are there any things that Java engineers, let's say compared to someone who's doing JavaScript or someone who is doing DevOps, would you pick out and say, you know what, Java guys really need to know about this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you are a Java developer, because you want to, not because you have to, usually means, well, I've seen a difference. Java is not the trendy guy in the group. It's not the cool guy in the group. So there are other options, more cool, nice. I don't know. I'm thinking on JavaScript, TypeScript. You have lots of communities based on frameworks that or libraries that can live for, I don't know, 1 year, then another one, then they break compatibility with previous versions, and that's fine. This couldn't be an option with Java. So it's like, if you break compatibility, it's like, no, man. So this is totally unacceptable. But it happens in other communities, and that's fine. And even, I assume that it's even encouraged. So I would say that if I need to use any stereotype to define differences, probably it's because a person that is using Java is because that person thinks more on stability, on something that has been there for 25 years. Probably it's not the coolest thing, but it's still there. And it has a super big community of people, fans, let's say. I don't know. I think it's like more like something stable and not something that comes and goes. That would
Driving a
be my
like
description.
driving a Volkswagen, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether the Java community would appreciate that analogy, Rudy. Although it'd be interesting poll to do. If you're a Java programmer, what car do you drive? That kind of stuff. Let's test it. But I think that's a really interesting insight. So I think certainly a lot of classic recruiting techniques is to say, hey, we're using the latest framework. We're using this. It's very modern. It's very, sexy, if you like. It's the latest, the greatest neo-feelism. However, that is not likely to be ineffective when you're hiring a Java engineer, because they actually may be quite skeptical, let us say, about this framework or that framework, because fundamentally it is about interoperability, it is about compatibility, it's about stability. So have a think about that, folks. If you're hiring for software engineers and it's Java engineers you're recruiting for, you've got to have a different story to tell. You can't just throw the same things around as you would do if you're hiring, let's say, for JavaScript. Very, very interesting, Jonathan. Going to you, Thomas. Where do I find Java engineers? I'm like new to it. I want to get better. I don't want to be one of these people just like cranking the big lever and sending them the message to 1,000 PHP developers or whatever. How do I actually identify or find places where I can find Java engineers? Have you got any thought on that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're in a lucky position where we founded and organized the London Java community a good number of years ago now. I think it's one of the largest active Java user groups in the world. There's virtual events. We've in the last year gone back to actually doing sort of LGC live events, whereby you can meet people in a physical environment, predominantly out of London. But and are you asking in terms of you need to hire, where do I look? Or
yeah, like
Okay.
what are the best options? Like, say I'm kind of new to either the tech recruiting or new maybe to Java recruiting. I mean, perhaps I've been recruiting Python people. I don't know. Like, where would you suggest these people potentially go?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like secret sauce to it. There's a lot of the sort of similar methods will work. Like I say, there's a lot of online sort of communities now. There's LinkedIn should be an interesting candidate pool still. You've got Stack Overflow, GitHub, and I mean, even looking at things like putting on events on specific technologies or languages, trying to create that third space really to have interesting conversations with I guess people in your target market. You need to be talking about something interesting to attract these people. I think similarly, if you're a recruiter going to market, having a really good understanding about what differentiates your project or the development work that you have in the next sort of 6 to 9 months, what are the most interesting parts of that? Really sort of calibrating with the engineering team to understand what have you enjoyed doing over the last 6 months, what can we shout about? I was speaking to someone recently who said something interesting when evaluating sort of companies. When he was looking to move, he said he would often look at how difficult it was to find anything about the engineering culture on a company's website. How many clicks does it take him to find it? How hidden is it? If it's hidden on the website, does that mean it's not necessarily something that holds too much weight within the business? I think a lot of companies do that very well now. There's usually quite a bit online, specifically in larger businesses, around what they do well. I think if you're a smaller business, it's about trying to identify some of the more interesting aspects of the development work, and perhaps working environment, and the impact that you could have within that business, and shouting about that, but also being transparent about perhaps some of the less interesting parts of the role too. Like, no one likes surprises, and the worst case is you spend or invest a lot of time in an interview process, you onboard someone, and it's a bit of a surprise at the beginning, and it ends up they're not doing what they thought they were going to do when they joined, and they leave. So it's really about trying to find an effective way of communicating the best and potentially some of the duller elements of the role. I think that will only help you build rapport as well with people too, because unless you've got something that you're building completely from scratch, there's likely some gremlins in there somewhere as well.
You know what, folks? That's a very simple question to ask your hiring manager or your client. You can simply say, hey, list the top 3 things that are really interesting about the work. And please, can you list the bottom 3 things that are quite boring? Just ask that question and force the hiring manager to list them down. Because think about your credibility to the candidate when you're able to say, hey, listen, man, this is really cool. You can do this, this, and this. But you know what? The cards on the table, here are some of the other maintenance work you've got to do. We've got this legacy thing we can't get rid of. You've got to kind of maintain that. That's going to add not only a realism to the story, because I think a lot of people who are quite mature job seekers or have gone through the round a couple of times, they're aware that every job will have its pluses and minuses. If you're able to actually fill those gaps in, that's going to help solidify this as an opportunity in the person's mind and think, you know what, I'm going in, eyes open. Easy question to ask for. And by the way, it will really improve your relationship with the hiring manager if you're able to ask that question as well, because it will force the hiring manager to also think, yes, I need to think about these things. Thank you for that, recruiter, for reminding me of them. Very, very good. Okay, very quickly, Jonathan, what are the Java community talking about these days? Take us into the deep waters, man. Don't worry about dragging us out of our depth. What's the technical conversations that's annoying Java people right now outside of recruiting? What is the technical conversations that are inspiring Java engineers right now outside of recruiting?
Well, the important part is that recently the Java 21 was released, and a lot of people are interested on it. But again, just to confirming what I said before, most of people are in Java 8 or Java 11. So it's like a big minority is using Java 21, but everyone is interested about Java 21. This is also a very important thing to know. Well, that can help recruiters to know in which stack developers are majority using. That's
very important point. Like, what flavor version of Java is your current stack? That's a critical question. Engineers might assume you don't know. And by the way, do you know, Java recruiters? Do you actually know? Well, okay, get to know. Again, that's an easy question to ask the hiring manager. Java 21, why is it different? Like, what are the revolutions that you're talking about that's got people excited, Jonathan?
Well, basically, I would highlight virtual threads. It's an important part because it allows now to not stick to physical threads in the operating system. So now you can create 1 million threads, and you are like using pools for those threads. So that's a very interesting feature. It's LTS. What it means to be LTS, it's only a marketing concept, but it's like it is supposed that you are going to have 8 years of support from the most of the vendors, depending on which is the vendor that you're using. This is also another important part. People should pay attention to which is the vendor that they are using for the JDK, and there are several. That's important, not only Oracle. There are lots of them. Basically, I would highlight this feature.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jonathan. We're running out of time, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I've really had a great time. I could sit here and talk to these guys for another couple of hours, but I hope you understand what we're trying to achieve with this series. We're trying to just surface up the mysteries demystified between the two communities. What is going on? Why are behaviors like this? Why do we have slightly different sort of incentives and demands? Final word to you, Rudy. Take us away. What are your closing thoughts on this conversation, and what's next for us in this series?
I have big thanks to Thomas and Jonathan and Hang, to you for doing that with us. I think it's really important to bring these two worlds together. I think that's the initial idea. And the next one is on 30th of November. We are talking about DevOps, how to recruit DevOps. I think that's the next one in the series coming up. And I did one thing which I always normally do, and I throw it just in. I don't know how relevant it really is. I asked ChatGPT, what is the one question you should never ask a Java developer? And it was, how do you see yourself in 5 years? So that is what I found out. So probably you can use it, or probably don't use it. So probably it helps you. But really big thank you to all of you. It was a great pleasure having this discussion with you. I hope the auditorium enjoyed it as well. So we're looking forward to see some further comments, and it's work in progress. So it was first out of a series, and we take all your feedback, of course, as bringing us further and also improving ourselves and the quality of the format. But I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It was great fun to have all of you here. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Hang. Thanks, Thomas.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.